I'm Andy. I analyze mythology and folklore. Welcome to Tantalizing Myths. Now that Lilith is wrapped up, I'm going to move into some biblical myths. Remember, myths are stories, so don't take offense about me saying the Bible contains myths. A fair chunk of the Bible is nothing but stories. Before we dive in, we need a good, relatable metaphor to understand the complexity of the Bible. Dan McClellan's channel features video, link below, that likens the Bible to a pile of Lego bricks. As someone who spent his youth with Legos spread across the floor of my bedroom, spending hours and hours assembling spaceships, I can relate. His metaphor is about how people will sift through the Bible to find the piece they're looking for to justify their interpretation, often a dogmatic interpretation. I remember furiously searching for that one freaking piece I saw half an hour ago, but I didn't need at the time, and now I can't find it. Sorry, it's an old and very familiar trauma. Anyway, it's a good metaphor for how religions use the Bible, but and I assume anyone watching this, need a different metaphor for when it comes to looking at it as literature, specifically mythology. In today's world, we see the Bible as a book, a single work with a single voice, often with single message or very closely related messages. But this isn't a novel or even a series of novels like Lord of the Rings, The Hunger Games, or A Song of Ice and Fire. One person, or divinity, didn't author these from start to finish. We know that, temporally, the Bible spans thousands of years of various empires. Not even Methuselah lived that long. So we need a better metaphor to understand the lens of literature and story. Fortunately, I have one. Simply, the Bible is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know, at first glance you might say that a series of movies is no different than a series of books, but there's a lot of difference. First, the MCU is made up of movies that focus on certain characters like Iron Man, Captain America, Ant-Man, and Thor. Even within those movies and their own series of movies, the scripts and directors vary. The tone and genre of each film is different. Iron Man shows a billionaire playboy finally growing up and taking responsibility. Ant-Man is a classic heist story. Thor is a family drama. Even within a character's individual series, the genre and tone vary widely. Captain America the First Avenger is a historical war film filled with patriotism. The Winter Soldier is a political spy thriller, while Civil War tears the Avengers team apart, pitting the team against itself. Thor's first film is very serious with tones of responsibility and family, but the third one is just a comedy romp, though family is still very much a theme. Each film in the MCU has its own genre, its own tone, and its own purposes to accomplish. They exist within the same shared universe, but they're all individual to themselves. The same goes for books in the Bible. Exodus is the heroic journey of Moses, where he frees the Hebrews and helps establish a new nation. Leviticus is a book of laws. Kings is a political drama with a struggle of succession between Saul and David, and then David's corruption from a great hero to a power-hungry king. Genesis is primeval etiological myths and ancestral stories. The list goes on, especially as we get to books like Job, which tell of cosmological councils debating what it means to love God. Proverbs are just a bunch of wise sayings, while the Song of Solomon is very not safe for work. Taken individually, they make sense, but without the Bible bringing them all together, no one would say that the Exodus and the Song of Solomon have the same genre, same themes, or the same authors. If discovered today, no one would ever think to put them in the same volume together. But because we approach the Bible through the cultural lens of religion, we see it as a cohesive work. We only consider it as a whole entity instead of something, well, assembled. It's not just the genres and authors. We have to consider time. The MCU movies were not released in chronological order. Captain America the First Avenger is chronologically first, but it was released fourth. Captain Marvel is chronologically next, but doesn't show up until just before Endgame. And a lot less said about Black Widow's movie chronology, the better. I have a link to a page with the chronological order and the release order of the MCU in the description. The Bible's chronology is just as messed up. Keep in mind, at no point is the Bible an on-the-scene report of what's happening. Any events described took place years, if not decades or centuries before. The Bible was constructed by many authors over a vast period of time. Matt Baker over at Useful Charts has a great chart and video about biblical authorship, links below. The Bible we have has been assembled into a given order. Christian Bibles especially attempt a purely chronological order, but that definitely was not the order the books were written in. The Hebrew Bible uses chronology as a secondary organization, preferring to divide by genre: the Torah, the 5 books of Moses; the Nevi'im, the prophets; the Ketuvim, the writings. The apologies for my pronunciation. A Hebrew scholar, I ain't. The scribes and editors who compiled and edited the Bible also tried to unify the various voices and manuscripts into a cohesive set of narratives, laws, essays, and poetry, but that's a really tall order. So while the books of Genesis appear first, that's only the chronological sequence the editors and scribes wanted to be first. Most scholars agree that the stories found in Genesis are not the first records of writing. That's not to say these stories were not transmitted orally before recorded writings. They almost certainly were. But like medieval fairy tales, those stories had to be collected, such as by Charles Perrault and the Brothers Grimm. Like fairy tales, there are regional versions. If scribes and editors sought to compile stories, they first had to go find them, then figure out the sequence of where they fit together, or impose a sequence that fit the narrative of their current culture, and decide which elements of the stories were correct within the themes they wanted to emphasize. I won't speculate further on that. The scholarship is out there, but I'm all about the stories and narratives. Understanding the Bible is assembled, yes, I'm very much back to that pun, is critical to our analysis of it. As we go through, we're going to find inconsistencies, we're going to see contradictions, and if we know what to look for, we're going to see the joinery. The stories are stitched together with words, sometimes expertly, sometimes very poorly. Many times we're not even fully sure of whether a given passage is by an author or a later editor trying to retcon the story in some way. Yet if we know going in that the Bible is this assemblage of disparate tales and voices, we can gain wholly different insights to it as we go. And even though the stories are not all by the same author, it is still that same shared universe. Sometimes it's a stretch, like how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. were mostly excised from the universe, or there are the TV shows and how they fit into the continuity, but we can still make some fascinating connections and analyses. The last point I want to make is that there is source material. I said that the Bible is the MCU, which is distinct from the comics. The MCU draws from the Marvel comics, but that is only the inspiration. It's not verbatim. The same is true with the Bible. Much of this was collected from oral tradition before being written down. We have no idea how many versions or how much has changed from the original oral stories until they were written down much later. Also, we don't have much in the way of versions. The distillation down to a single text has made the Bible easier to preserve and eliminated competition, especially in religions, but has left us poorer for the lack of different texts. We don't have the 616 universe, or the 1066 universe, or the noir universe, where the wind is always blowing Spider-Man's trench coat, even indoors. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls was huge because it gave us a peek at different versions of texts that were only hinted at existing, or even completely unknown. When the average person goes to a bookstore and picks up a Bible, it's understood that there's very little variation in the text source material. None of this is tear the Bible down. I love the Bible. It's the most fascinating book ever written. I just come at it from completely different perspectives through literature. I hope this metaphor helps people understand the Bible in a different way. If you've seen some of my other videos, you already know that different is what I do best. The same holds true for the Bible stories. I'll catch you next time on Tantalizing Myths.